Welcome to the DevReady Podcast, where we're helping non-techs build better tech. Today we're joined by Chris Ellis, who is the founder of Ellivate Consulting. He helps startups, predominantly scale-ups, move to the next level. We've got fast-moving teams, growing teams. How do we manage that? We can start in a very small team at the beginning. So for a startup out there, may have 1, 2, 3 people, 5 people. But when we get to 50 or 200, what do we do with that? How do we manage that? It takes a very different structure, an operational structure to do that. And Chris will talk today about how we can leverage team people and even look at revenue operations, what that means. And we'll dig into some two principles and how you help scale ups. Chris, thank you for joining us on DevReady Podcast.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Great to be here.
I love to look a little bit back as to your experience, your background, and how you got to where you are before we dig into how we might help some people when they're thinking about sort of growing, expanding teams. Tell us a bit about your background and your history in the space of just career.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so I've sort of 25 years in the world of corporate and working. My career started more in the side of banking back in the UK and then here in Australia. But most of the roles that I've done in the world of banking were around operations, so supporting the go-to-market teams, distribution teams in retail and business banks. And then I decided to get out of the world of banking and got more into the world of SaaS and technology. Was Chief Operating Officer for Ansarada, which is a M&A technology business here in Australia that's doing some great things globally. And then 5 years ago, I decided to go it alone and created Ellivate. So for the last 5 years, we're a boutique consulting business working with scale ups, really looking to put the right systems, frameworks, and processes in place for their go-to-market teams to help them drive consistent performance and ultimately drive revenue for the organization.
So every business is looking for
Exactly.
better revenue, better systems, less headaches. So someone to come in and help solve the problems, because every business does have problems. That's the reality, or challenges, whichever way you look at them. No matter what level you're at, right? So I think
Exactly.
there's always something to solve for, because we're right at our edge all the time. We got to here, but that's not going to get us to the next step.
That's right. And I think, that most organizations, often founders feel like they're facing these challenges alone and these problems that they're experiencing, it's only them, where more often than not, every organization has got these same challenges, either at a different scale, slightly different pivot on the way that it's happening. But ultimately, the core problems are very similar across organizations. And then nobody's alone in the things that they're
It's
experiencing.
surprising how everyone thinks that they're the only person to have ever gone through that problem before.
That's right.
Everyone's their own unique snowflake.
Yeah.
We all think we're unique. That's okay. We see the more you get out there in conversations you have, you realise that yes, there are people that have done what you've done before, gone through what you've been through before, and can help. And I think that's what this conversation's about. How do we help people get out through those challenges? So, what's the first step for you if you get engaged by a business or an organisation? Generally, where are they reaching out, or what's the core? There's always, like for you, there might be a core 1 or 2 problems that they're having in their business. What are some of those that bring you into the business?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So it does vary a lot by different organizations in terms of the reasons. We offer different services, so both consulting, where we go into the organization, but also training and coaching. So depending on the business needs will depend on the reason why they've reached out to us. So it could be the fact that they've identified a skills gap in their go-to-market teams where they're looking for training support, and we'll then go into their organisation, actually deliver tailored training for those team members. Um, and then in a lot of cases, it is more around us actually going and consulting with that organisation. Quite often, I call it the virtual rev-ops leader solution that we have, which is like a fractional leadership role that you do within that organisation, where revenue operations is quite a new term here in Australia. More and more businesses are identifying it as a need, and we'll go into their business and actually help them either build that function or act in a role in that business for a period of time, or more often than not, do a deep dive on the organisation to help really bring to life the pain points that they've currently got and identify where the problems are in their revenue cycle, and look at ways in which we can help them going forward. But more often than not, these organisations are reaching out to us because, ultimately it's either a skills gap that they've got in their business within the team, of go-to-market, or in their revenue operations function.
Do you see that the skill gap is probably one of the main things that most of them would have? Just if you are going from that startup to scale up and that quick ramp up, managing a larger group of people or a more intensive product or whatever it may be is going to be a different thing than what you've been doing in the past.
That's right. Yeah. So certainly, once you get to that size of, say, an organisation of 100 to 200 people, although again the problems are quite similar, it's the scale of these issues. So, example might be with, say, a sales team. Might have 10, 15, 20 salespeople in the organisation. Quite often at this point in time, organisations haven't decided on a sales methodology, well-defined sales process that everybody is following. So that's one of the gaps that we see quite regularly in organisations of that sort of size. And they've hired lots of great salespeople who are very experienced, but there isn't a consistent process that they're all following because they've brought their own skills, capabilities, processes from other organisations, and nobody's sort of centred those within the current business and said, right, well, how are we going to go about taking this product to market? How are we going to go about selling? And we find that's a skill gap that there is in the business. Alternatively, it's the bigger gap where we've got what I call the founder's curse, but the founder has been doing so much across the organisation. Now they've got to let go and have others start to deliver these more specific skills and capabilities and be more specialised in their roles because the organisation is getting much, much bigger. You can't be a generalist of everything any longer. So we see that as a gap we need to help people with as well.
The founder's curse, yeah. I think founders are used to doing everything or being a part of everything.
Right.
It's just letting go can be challenging. Revenue operations, first time I've actually heard the term, but what does that mean to you? Just define that for me.
Yeah, great question. So I think in Australia, it's a much newer term. It's a lot more embedded in the US and the UK particularly. But you may have heard the term sales operations before, which is, I think a lot of people still use that term. And really, revenue operations is taking it up another level and really looking across the complete revenue cycle. So if we think about when generating revenue for an organization, it really starts with the marketing function and driving leads into the business before that lead gets passed to the sales team. And then ultimately in SaaS, particularly customer success, who are ensuring the customer realizes value in their product, and also looking at ways to help grow that relationship going forward and expand the relationship. So where revenue operations comes in, is slightly different. Is the fact that it's really looking at the complete revenue cycle, driving alignment across marketing, sales, and customer success. So rather than just thinking sales operations, which tends to focus just on the sales process for when the sales team are involved, we're looking at completely everything from lead to revenue being driven, and more importantly, that recurring revenue and churn and managing the ongoing relationships with customers as well. So they're all about driving the efficiency in the business and the effectiveness of the go-to-market teams.
So I'm just sort of hearing that out or speaking that back from some terms that I know of. Like it's the customer journey, but then improving the efficiency in that and how the customer's engaging with the business across the journey. Is that where you're at?
That's right, yes. And looking at, how we create a seamless customer experience, but also a seamless experience for the teams internally. So how do we remove those roadblocks between marketing and sales that might be causing a pain point both internally for the teams, but also might be creating a bad and poor customer experience, or same between sales and customer success. As we pass that person once the revenue's been realised, to help the customer then realise the value in our product, how do we ensure that it's a great handover is happening, that it's seamless, and more importantly, from a systems perspective internally in the business, that we've got that consistent view of the customer, and help them realise the real success and value of our product.
This can obviously help any business. Let's be honest.
Yep.
At what point would someone really want to be considering this? Because I would imagine at a startup level, we are considering this as an operational business that's outside of SaaS. We should be considering this. When does it really add significant value to a business to go through a process like this?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I always, this is always a contentious one, I think, as to, well, when do you make your first hire in this sort of space in an organization? And, a lot of people say, oh, you need a number of sales team members in the business to sort of generate the revenue to say that this is required, and same, in terms of marketing roles and customer success roles as well. I think I would probably throw it out there and say perhaps it should be one of the first hires that you have in go-to-market, because they can embed the foundational capability for every other hire coming into the business to have a clear process to follow, to have some great data and analytics, etc., in place to really understand what actions can be taken in the business to improve performance. So I'm a big advocate of the sooner you hire this role, the better. A lot of organizations would say that they'd want to have a number of people in their go-to-market function first before this role is hired, and that would include sales roles, marketing roles, and customer success roles. But for me, I think the sooner you can bring someone in who is that sort of revenue operations leader and put the foundations and processes in place, it's going to set your business up for scale and for the opportunity to grow as quickly as possible without having to revisit many of these approaches further down the line because they haven't been implemented in the right way.
Well, they'll always evolve, I imagine, but yeah, just having a bit of a groundwork where everyone's on the same page or hymn sheet is important in any facet of a business operation. So
Yep.
Let's dig in a little bit into some detail. So you've got a 12-step framework that you take people through. You don't really ask a lot of questions. If we could touch upon a little bit of that, just give the listeners some sort of feel as to, not necessarily, you may not need to hire this in, but maybe a founder could be thinking about these things as they're going through the journey. Maybe they're small, medium-sized, whatever they might be. But if we start to embed some of these things up front, that will obviously help in the long term as well.
Yes, so let me give you just a bit of a flavour of both the. So the framework we use was built around revenue operations and revenue enablement. So as I mentioned earlier, revenue operations for me is all about getting the right efficiency for the business, so putting the right processes in place. Whereas revenue enablement is more about the effectiveness of the go-to-market teams and getting that alignment across the go-to-market teams. So we split the framework into 12 steps. The first 6 all focus on revenue operations, and the second 6 all around revenue enablement. And fundamentally, obviously, at the center of all of that is strategy. You need a good strategy to execute against all of these things, whether that be your go-to-market strategy, the wider organizational strategy that you're executing on as well. So in terms of operations, the first area that I focus on is what we call performance and productivity. So this is all about having the right operating rhythm for the business and the go-to-market teams. So when I say operating rhythm, what are the meetings that are happening on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis that are really setting up your teams for success? And for me as an individual, what's my day in a life look like? What are the activities that I'm doing day in, day out to drive the business and drive revenue in the organization? The second step is then all around process and the sales process. So from lead through to revenue, what are the steps that I'm taking in the organization to drive success, drive that customer journey, and deliver revenue for the organization? And the third part is process improvement. So like you said earlier, Andrew, these things are always evolving, and you need to continuously be looking at processes and looking at ways that you can improve them. And obviously, as we all know, in the world of technology and SaaS, the volume of tools that are out there, etc., that can improve the way in which you're operating, can automate your processes and create a great experience for both your customers and your team, mean you've got to continuously be looking at process improvement. The second area is then what we call measure and motivate. So this is all the ways in which we're going to create data and measure the team, but also how we're going to help motivate our go-to-market team members as well. So the first section of this is around targets and KPIs, or a lot of cases in organizations, OKRs that we're now using. So what are the targets in place that we're going to measure the team against? What are the goals that we're going to be setting for the teams, and how are we going to align marketing, sales, and customer success to have those joint goals that they're all aligned on against delivering the part that they play in delivering those goals.
The alignment's pivotal, isn't it? If
That's
you've
right.
got a sales marketing team disconnected, all the best.
Any department, really.
Any
Yeah.
department.
Everyone needs
But
to
they're really
understand
on the same page.
what everyone's doing to drive forward.
That's it. But unfortunately, you do hear a lot still of sales and marketing misalignment, and that can happen in many different ways. And that's where I think having clear goals at the start and OKRs that are aligned between those teams is a great way of setting yourself up for success. Next comes reward and recognition. So how are we going to reward our go-to-market teams and recognize great performance through, commission schemes, different initiatives that we run across the organization? And again, a lot of this is relevant to any part of the business, but particularly in sales, customer success teams, you want to have those great commission schemes in place that are going to motivate people in the right way and not hinder them in terms of and demotivate them from a revenue generating perspective, but they believe that there are ways in which they can, accelerate their earning potential through great commission schemes.
I've always understood that there needs to be a good balance there, because we can just have a revenue target and then all of a sudden our customer support and areas flounder because everyone's just focused on the next sale. How do you find a balance across those areas? Because it's quite pivotal to success. We need to be structured in a way where we have balance, not all focused on one area. It could be all support, then everyone just focuses all their energy on account management, but then new customers aren't coming in. So how do you balance that?
That's it. Yeah. It's a really difficult one and a lot of organisations I do see get these things wrong from a commission scheme perspective. So I always think simple is best, and sometimes we can really overcomplicate schemes, which become demotivating for people, or they drive the wrong behaviours. So I think first thing to always look at is, well, what's the behaviours that we want to drive across the business when we're designing a scheme? And how do we drive collaboration as well between the different teams? So back to that alignment point, you don't want just a sales team that all they're focused on is new business revenue at the sacrifice of just bringing a customer on, and then customer success are having to deal with the mess that can come from that if the right conversations haven't happened, the right handover hasn't happened, and I've perhaps promised things to the customer that are just not achievable through the product and solution that we have in the organisation. So for me, behaviours underpin anything that we do with a commission scheme, and getting really clear on the behaviours that we want to achieve and the ways in which we want to get that collaboration between the go-to-market teams can ensure that you get a scheme that achieves the right outcomes and ensures that there is that teamwork and alignment between different departments in the business as well.
It makes a lot of sense, I think, yeah. Focusing behaviour first can tick the box rather than just a number. We're trying to target X amount of sales. That puts everyone in that framework.
That's right. And, I'm passionate about this in terms of where we see organizations challenge as they scale is they focus very much on the what, which, is back to the outcome is, we want more revenue. Great. That's the what. But what's the why and what's the how around those things? And again, I think leaders can spend more time focused on that. And if we can get the why right and take people on that journey, tie it into the vision, the mission of the organisation, the strategy, that's going to be huge in terms of taking everybody in the business along on the journey that you're going on. But also, how are we going to equip them with the how? And when I come on to revenue enablement, we'll talk a bit more about that from a go-to-market perspective. But so often that's a big breakdown in organisations where the how isn't put in place. But we just keep talking about the outcomes that we want from people. How are we going to get there? How are you going to support me in achieving these goals that you're setting?
It's generally left to the experience of people. Yeah, how do we train, support, ensure people have all the detail that they need to make it happen. But it also depends on where the business is at. So if they're at a position where they can replicate something, that's a good place to be. If you're still testing, engaging, the how is maybe undetermined or unknown at that moment in time.
Yeah, great point. And then the final part of the measure and motivate for us is reporting and analytics. So, yeah, you can only deliver what you measure and see, the measurements that are in place. So, what's the reporting and analytics that the revenue operations team can put in place to really see that performance across the business, across the revenue cycle? So, really understanding the different challenges that business is experiencing, the different conversion rates that we're seeing across the revenue cycle, and really starting to help the business understand, well, what levers can we pull to drive an improvement in performance? Is it that we need more leads at the top of the funnel? Is it that we need to be having better quality conversations through the sales funnel so that we can be converting more? Is it that we're not understanding once we bring a customer on board the true value that we're generating for them, so that we can upsell and cross-sell to them with different products and features? So that is a essential part, is having that reporting and analytics in place to back to the how. If I can measure everything, I can understand the hows and the challenges that are there for the business, and help the organisation make some changes.
So on that front there, there'll be a number of tools that you would have to embed into a system, into a business to enable this, clearly. What's some of the things that you find that people embed, or technology that people embed to actually manage this area of their business?
Yeah. I think the biggest one is the CRM that the organisation needs. So if we can get a consistent core system in place, like a customer relationship management system, then that is really going to help set the organisation up for success. When I talk a bit more about enablement, we talk about systems and tools, and the fact that quite often we see organisations pick the tool too early before they've looked at all these factors that we're talking about here. And then they have to revisit that decision that they've made because they've decided that the tool isn't scalable with where the business is heading. And CRM is probably one of the biggest ones that we see that happen with, where an organisation has made a decision very early on in their life cycle, and perhaps if they'd waited a little bit longer, done a bit more research, understood where they really wanted to take the business with their strategy, the CRM would have been more scalable with the organisation. So definitely that, for me, is the biggest thing that we're looking at. Obviously, across marketing and sales particularly, CRM is crucial in terms of getting leads into a funnel, understanding those, converting those contacts into a known prospect that they then can turn into an opportunity or a deal in the CRM system. And I think, although there's lots of other tools that are needed to be used by the go-to-market teams, that to me is the pivotal foundational one.
Is there one or two you lean to that you find are the best for scaling businesses?
Yeah, most of the organisations I work with would be one of two tools, and that is Salesforce or HubSpot. So we're seeing more and more businesses using HubSpot, which is perhaps a bit more out-of-the-box solution for organisations, but some come across challenges with it when they want to integrate more and more solutions, and there's still other tools out there don't all integrate as much as they do with Salesforce. But those would be the two main CRMs that the clients that I'm sort of looking at, who have gone through a couple of funding rounds, have got to the point of 150, 200 staff, they're using those as either of those as their core CRM system.
How does that come into from a marketing end? Because they both have the ability to run marketing campaigns through them, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah. From my experience and the research I've done, I did another round of CRM research this year.
Yeah.
And they're very similar, but they end up being costly. So I'm guessing that's probably what drives the decision to not use them, which is
Correct.
one of the reasons we chose not to use it
Yeah.
up front until you see the scale of like the results of putting stuff into a CRM. Then you go, I might need to get to that at some point.
That's right, and that's, I think, back to understanding as a business the longer term strategy and where you're trying to head. Sometimes making that short term decision from a cost perspective can actually have longer term impacts. And ultimately, you can always use different CRM early on, and then you move to these more expensive solutions. It just obviously requires more work when you start to do that migration and the data that you're moving across, and perhaps some of the challenges you then experience with the quality of the data you captured in the original solution that you're trying to move into say a HubSpot or Salesforce. But certainly, both tools have their own marketing capabilities. They have their own integrations that you can use other marketing uh, tools to integrate into them, and there's different ways in which organisations are doing that. That I think the complexity now is just the sheer volume of platforms out there now in the marketplace. It can be very overwhelming for an organisation to just build that tech stack out and understand exactly what is going to work for us as a business.
Yep.
And that's I guess where other organisations like ours and others out there can help add value to organisations to help understand, well, what do we need as foundational, and what perhaps do we need to invest in longer term that we don't need from day one. And again, there comes a break point probably where there's certain platforms that you do need. I use examples like even with customer success, having like a customer success platform where you can manage and measure and forecast the churn that's going on in the business, create health scores, and look at the risk of customers churning in the future, etc. It becomes more and more important as your organisation scales. But you might not want that from day one when you've only got 5 customers.
Yeah, you can work out the churn rate pretty easily, can't you?
That's it.
I think another cost that people probably don't realize when we're thinking about migrating from system to system is the training and staffing cost of having to actually redo all your training material, explain the new process, get them up to speed. If you've got one person running your CRM in the early days, it's very easy to move that one person over to a new one.
Yeah.
If you have 20, 30 people in that stream, it's going to become quite difficult to then change culturally across 30 people and have a new way of working.
Definitely, and I think that's a big point in terms of people going through that change curve, the volume of other change that's going on in the business as well, and then on top of that, you're adding system changes, etc. And again, for me, that's about getting it right early on, not just in terms of the tool that you're choosing, but the way in which you set it up to be used in the organisation as well. That can have a huge impact, and to put 50, 60, or even 200 people through that change, because either you're making changes within the platform that you've got because you didn't set it up correctly in the first place, or you're migrating to a new platform, can be a huge impact, cost, time, and just stopping people from doing what you really want them to be doing, particularly go to market, which is accelerating, selling, or generating opportunities.
It's a lot to think about as you get bigger, isn't it?
That's it, and that's why CRM, I say, sits importantly with reporting and analytics, because that is the quality of reporting that you can get out of that platform. It's obviously only as good as the data you're putting in, but again, if you have documented a great sales process, you've clearly identified the ways in which you're going to measure people, and you've got everyone consistently following that framework, you're going to get great data coming out of the platform as well, which is going to give you much better reporting and improve the decision making that you make as a business.
All comes down to the people using the system. The system can be
That's right.
as good as it is, but if you're not using it properly or using the power of it, then it's pointless. So yeah, it requires a lot of training, a lot of skilling. But I think the big thing you said there is the initial setup and config, because there's always a part of that within the business that, how are we going to really work with the platform? Because these types of solutions can be used in many different ways. What's going to best serve us, best serve our customers, and give us the data we need to make better decisions. So would you advise people to go out and get some consulting as they get a bit bigger in that space?
Yes, so I think there are 2 ways of doing it. If you've hired that rev-ops role into your business, then they should own this and they should be driving this for your organisation. If you haven't got to that point yet where you've created that operations function to support the business, then I think getting that consulting support in where people have done this numerous times, they know what tech stacks can work well for a business, and more importantly, can help you create a consistent process that's going to sit within the platforms that you're using. I think can add massive value. But certainly, I'd be urging organisations as well as leveraging consultants to hire that RevOps role that can own that, drive that for your business going as well.
Makes sense. In terms of RevOps versus just operations in totality, could that be one role, or needs to be 2, or is there a point where it breaks away?
Yeah, I think it is a point and it breaks away. I think operations in totality is where a lot of organizations start with. And obviously that's, could be looking at your internal infrastructure across the business that you've got outside of just the revenue functions, go-to-market functions. Those roles are looking at, perhaps change management, all sorts of different things across the business. Where I think, revenue operations comes in is there comes a point where you want that specialism and somebody that's really focused just on the go-to-market structure of the business, both in terms of the technology and the processes that you've got in place across the business. And that, I think, a business will probably start to realise where that comes into play, and you suddenly getting to the point where your operations team are much more just focusing on the way the business is running on a day-to-day basis across the whole team. And you go, right, we need this insights now in terms of revenue, and what is it that we can be doing to drive an increase in our revenue, particularly as, in a lot of cases we're scaling, we're being held to account by investors, by our board, and there's expectations for that 60% year on year increase, or even more in terms
We don't
of
expect much, do we?
No.
No.
And I think that's when, if I've got the dollar, we're spending the dollars on go-to-market teams, and we're spending to grow. That's when a revenue operations role can really come into play and add the value for the business.
Brilliant. Let's think a bit about enabling. I'm sure we've touched a bit on it with some tools and structures. So, enabling teams to operate efficiently in this revenue stream, what are some of the things that are key factors here?
Yeah, so we, again, like the revenue operations, there's two sections to this, with three elements of each. But the first one's scale with systems. So in the scale with systems, we're talking about having the right operating model. So what's that operating model between marketing, sales, customer success? What are the different roles that we need in the business? So as an organization becomes bigger, to begin with, you may just have sales roles that are doing everything, sort of account executives. But over time, you want to think about SDRs that are supported by either an outbound outreach perspective or inbound inside sales type roles. So really, what's the structure that we need to put in place in the operating model to drive revenue across the different parts of the business? Next is platforms and tools. So this is really what I was mentioning earlier. And the fact that I'm talking about it at this point in time, because we've already put all these other elements in place, now is really the time to start thinking about what's the different platforms and tools that we need. And I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a great map that a lady called Nancy Nardine has produced called the Sales Technology Landscape. It's got nearly 2,000 different tools on it.
Oh, wow. That's not surprising, though. I think there's 10,000 plus CRMs, I believe, or some ridiculous number.
And there's 46 categories of tools. So that's the complexity that there is in place now for go-to-market teams to think about in terms of the ways in which they can manage their business and create a tech stack to support their business, from everything from conversational intelligence tools that are recording and analyzing calls and providing AI, through to lead generation tools, the marketing tools, through to enablement tools, which you call sort of sales engagement, sales readiness tools. There's just a wealth of different things out there in the marketplace that can be used now, before we even think about the CRM as well. So just massive complexity that we need to think about, and that's why we sort of say, well, think about everything else first, get the operating model, the processes in place before you worry too much about the complete tech stack.
So, complete tech stack. How many tools would an organisation at a scale of 200 people that you might be working with have in this area? What's the number?
Yeah, the number's a great one. I've seen some crazy numbers, and unfortunately, a pain point that I see here that organisations have created is not having enough control in this space, where they allow the teams to go out and almost identify their own
Use
tools,
any tool, yep.
and you end up with multiple tools to do the same job. So that obviously creates massive challenges for an organisation as well. But I'd be saying that there's 20 to 30 tools that organisations would be looking at as a base tech stack when you've got, say, 200 staff, and that could be everything from, say, if you think about the complete revenue cycle, it could be data enrichment tools to improve the quality of the data that we've either got going into our CRM, or for teams to be able to pull contact records and identify different people that need to outreach to. Could be something, like video recording software for us to be able to send messages to a prospect and interact
all
and
these
engage
new
with
tools
them
that are spinning up.
It's
Yes.
everything.
in a different
Yeah.
way. Yeah, it could be any of these sorts of things. So that's where it does start to get quite complex in terms of the volume of tools that we're seeing organisations use. But I wouldn't be surprised if most organisations, when they listed them, would have 20 or 30 tools that are being used.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's
When we
fascinating.
first started that conversation, I thought, oh, we haven't got that many. But when you actually broke down what they are, yeah, we've got a lot.
That's it. Yeah.
It's every little thing that's used along the way to create or enhance or improve something,
That's it.
and then do the thing.
Yeah, a business might have a CPQ software like configure, price, quote, in terms of being able to pull a proposal together and get that out that sits on top of Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever. Yeah, that's on top of the core CRM that they've got. Then they're looking at the email software that they're using, and that's going to integrate. Then you're looking at data enrichment, etc. So it's just huge when you start to map it out into that level of detail. And then the final part of scale
May come back.
the final part of scale with systems is communication and messaging. So this is about getting alignment externally with our customers around our value proposition, ensuring that marketing are targeting the same customers that we're targeting from an ICP or customer persona perspective, ensuring that we've got the same alignment in terms of the value prop that we're communicating out to those people as well. So that's a really huge one for us in terms of communication and messaging. And I talk about that externally and internally. So, as well as an organisation, how we communicate our strategy and how we communicate our go-to-market approach internally across the organisation as well.
It needs to be consistent, otherwise it gets a little bit messy, right? If you're marketing to one person in a different way and then we're selling in a completely different manner. So if there's no connection, it becomes disjointed and conversion rates are going to drop because you're not attracting the right person, or the messaging to get them in the room could have been different to what's been presented. So it's a fine line there, especially as the team gets bigger.
Yeah. Definitely. And and ultimately, if your marketing team is through their activity targeting a different persona to yourself, when those leads come into sales, misalignment straight away, because sales say, well, this is the target market, or they're giving a slightly different message that is misaligned to the marketing message that's been out there. So getting that alignment is crucial through the communication and messaging. And then our final segment is talented teams. So you've got productivity happening in the business. You're measuring and motivating people in the right way. You've got scale the systems and the technology, and then the final part is talented teams. So what are the competencies that we're looking for in our team to be successful? We can use that for hiring. We can use it for onboarding people. We can use it for designing the training and creating development within the organisation as well. So competencies are critical. The behaviours we want to see, the skills and capabilities that we want to measure people against. Next is training. So this is all about how are we going
to. Feels like it's never ending. This is quite a big undertaking.
Yeah.
But it all makes sense as you speak through it. There's so much there. The bigger we get, the more complicated it gets, especially when you get a number of people.
And then how are we going to onboard people from a training perspective? We can get the training right. We're going to improve the ramp time, and more importantly, get them delivering revenue more quickly for our business, which is crucial. So again, a lot of organizations just don't have online training programs, have training programs in place because early doors don't need to do it. They do it through mentoring. But you get to that point of scale where teams are global, teams are in multiple regions, and therefore you need that remote training that's going to happen and onboard people as quickly as possible. And not just in terms of training them when they're onboarding, but also how we're going to grow the skills and capabilities of our existing team members as well. It's going to help with retention, and it's also going to ensure that we continue to realise the revenue goals that we set ourselves. And then the final part is coaching. So as a leader, I've got to be coaching my team. I've got to be growing the team, increasing their skills and capabilities. But that coaching can only really happen when I've got clarity and consistency with the processes that are happening in the business that we're doing. So every leader globally is coaching against the same frameworks. Can only do it when we know what behaviors we want to coach to. And I can only do it when I've got the right tools and technology in place as well for people to be using so I can measure their performance. So coaching is the final part of the puzzle for us. And although, you want to see coaching happening from day one, ultimately you need to have all these other things in place to be able to coach to and to coach people's skills and capabilities upwards as well.
Well, clearly there's a breadth of areas there. How deep do we need to go? And probably the depth, depending on the size of the business, would be a question for you, because as we get bigger and bigger, we have to go deeper and deeper into each of those categories. But I feel like if you considered all of them, even if you were early days, just some top level things would make things a lot smoother across a team of 3 to 5, for example, within the sales team.
And maybe that's the levers you pull, is how deep do you go into each one as you grow potentially.
That's it, yeah. So we do we have like a scale up assessment that people can do online that takes like 3 minutes, and it quickly gives them a health check and assessment against where they are on all those 12 areas. Any business could do that, and it would give them some quick tools and things that they could put in place to just go, okay, yeah, we're struggling on X or Y, and this should be an area of focus for us as a quick health check. But when you get into a business with 200 people, the complexity of that organization, we're in there for days doing a deep dive on that business, looking at their CRM, looking at the pain points. I had one client that I worked with, we found 85 pain points in their sales process on
Where do you start?
doing their CRM.
Wow.
And we spent a long time with that business helping them fix those things and put those things into place. So, and that's not uncommon. So again, the complexity becomes greater as the business gets bigger. But even from day one, people could do a quick maturity assessment health check against these things and go, okay, yeah, we haven't got a sales process documented, so let's go and document that sales process. Or, we're not leveraging the reporting and analytics in the right way and creating some great dashboards that we, as a business, we can be using to make actionable decisions. So let's put those in place. And those can be done as, quite quick overviews, just asking themselves a few questions around these different areas and prioritizing. Obviously there's massive number of challenges organizations have got priorities as they scale. So it's like, which ones are the most important? And as I've said, for us, that's why we start, this is a secular approach, but it starts with the operating rhythm and works your way around. You can always prioritize based on those things, because for me, having a sales process that's consistently followed in the business is going to set you up for success, and having a great operating rhythm in your business is going to set you up for success.
Chris, lots of information, lots for people to consider. Even myself, I might go and do your little survey. So I'll reach it.
Need to.
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot
Can
there.
you imagine how many flaws in our sales process?
Well, let's not. That's all been run from me and Anthony driving in there. But yeah, it's interesting. So we're a small front-facing team, but yeah, have a number of people in delivery, but you still could be doing more consistent across what you're up to, right? So how do we get more consistent so you can actually leverage and bring people into a process? Because I feel like we've attempted to bring people into sales in the past, and it's probably failed because we don't have systems in play, and we've been doing this for 15 years, so we sort of know what to do and how to approach it, but that doesn't mean it's documented and anyone can pick up.
I don't even know how to document it.
Yeah, it's one step at a time.
And I think that's the biggest word you said there, Andrew, is consistency. I call it the 3 C's: consistency, consistency, consistency. If you do that as an organization and have these things documented and follow them in a way, it's much better than being occasionally great. And that's the key thing, is just getting the routines, the habits, the well-documented processes and frameworks. And for scale-ups and startups, that just gives you the foundations to going forward and sets you up for success.
So if anyone wants to look at the survey, where can they find it?
Yeah, you can find it on our website, which is ellivate.co, so ELLIVATE.co. And on the homepage, there's a link there to take the scale-up assessment. It'll take you about 3 minutes, and you get a personalized report off the back of that. And there's a number of tools built into it as well that people can immediately implement into their business.
Oh, brilliant, Chris. There's been so much information. I feel like we need to get you on about 4 or 5 more episodes and dig into each area
one for every
properly.
segment.
Yeah, because there's a lot there. So let's keep in contact and figure out how we might share some more depth of information across a few of them. But thanks for joining us on DevReady Podcast today. If anyone wants to reach out to Chris, he's on LinkedIn, Chris Ellis, and ellivate.co is the website. Thanks for joining us today. Really a pleasure to learn about all the things we have. We're not doing in our business, so thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, plenty of information there. Cheers.
Thank you to the both for the opportunity. It's been great.
Cheers,
problem.
Chris.
Thanks.
Thank you.